Wow. It looks even better than the photos.
It looks expensive. They always talk about how we're best friends. Best friends do this, best friends do that, but I don't want to be best friends, Jill.
You don't like me?
No. The problem is I like you too much. I fell in love with you the first time I laid eyes on you. I was hoping you felt the same.
Talk to me. Help me understand you.
I remember the first time I met Taylor. It was after class in the hallway. Like a cheesy rom-com, I dropped my books and no one noticed. I was invisible. But then I look up, someone is helping me. She was beautiful. I even remember her smell, like lavender. How could I forget? A fire was lit in me. She was all I could think about. All I wanted was to spend every waking moment with her. And in a way, my dreams came true.
This second film in the quartet shifts the emotional register from the slow burn dawning of mutual recognition to the ache of history, loss, and misaligned timing. And in doing so, it offers a different but equally resonant mirror for queer women, particularly Black queer women, whose lives are often shaped by friendships that carried unspoken possibility, and then fractured under the weight of heteronormative expectation, social exile, and fear of being seen. From its opening lines, the scene establishes intimacy not as erotic display, but as shared space, heat, water, a weekend carved out as refuge, and the quiet insistence that this time together must be protected from the encroachment of a man whose presence is both literal and symbolic, representing the life path Marie is expected to accept, rather than the one she has ever been invited to imagine for herself. The bath becomes a liminal space where defenses soften and memory resurfaces, and the dialogue's gentle circling around him signals how women are often taught to talk around their desires rather than through them, especially when those desires disrupt socially sanctioned narratives of marriage, stability, and respectability. Julie's question, simple, direct, and unmet by a direct answer, reveals an imbalance that queer viewers will recognize instantly. The one who has already named herself, already survived the consequences of visibility, asking clarity of the one who has been able to remain ambiguous, protected by the assumption of straightness and the promise of a wedding that offers safety at the cost of truth. The act of washing, recalling shared baths like sisters, is not framed as transgressive, but as a return to an intimacy that once existed before language hardened around identity. And this is crucial because it shows how queer desire often grows from familiarity and trust rather than from novelty. How the line between sisterhood and longing is less about taboo than about how women's closeness has historically been permitted only when it is stripped of sexual or romantic possibility. As they reminisce about the night at Gabby's, the film delicately exposes the asymmetry of memory. For Marie, that night becomes a footnote in a heterosexual love story, the place she met David, while for Julie, it is the moment their bond ruptured, a time when desire was offered and rejected, when intoxication provided cover for a truth that sobriety could not yet hold. This divergence speaks to a broader queer experience in which straight friends absorb shared histories into linear narratives of progress, dating, marriage, family, while queer women are left holding the emotional residue, the moments that matter deeply, but were never granted narrative legitimacy. When Julie names the disconnection as coinciding with her coming out, the film refuses euphemism, acknowledging directly how queerness can render someone socially inconvenient, a liability to proximity, especially in adolescence where belonging is currency. Marie's apology, sincere yet belated, underscores how often harm is recognized only after distance has been normalized, and how forgiveness, when offered, does not erase the cost of years spent outside the circle of ease. Julie's answer to the question of fear is one of the film's most quietly radical moments. Her certainty, her refusal to frame her attraction to women as confusion or phase, asserts a narrative of queer knowing that counters dominant stories of struggle, defined solely by doubt. And in doing so, it honors those queer women whose clarity did not protect them from rejection, but sustained them through it. Yet the film does not idealize this certainty as armor. Instead, it shows how being sure of oneself does not guarantee reciprocal courage, and how loving someone who cannot yet imagine a life outside expectation can be both grounding and devastating. The compliment, "Sometimes I forget how beautiful you are," lands with the weight of rediscovery, suggesting not that beauty was absent, but that it had been deliberately unacknowledged, tucked away to preserve the fiction of platonic safety, and this moment captures a familiar dynamic in which queer women are admired aesthetically, while their desire remains unspoken, contained, or dismissed as harmless so long as it does not demand action. Marie's confession that she cannot marry David arrives not as a dramatic rupture, but as a weary truth, one that many women, queer and straight alike, will recognize as the culmination of years spent mistaking adequacy for love. And the film treats her uncertainty with compassion while still interrogating its implications, refusing to let fear masquerade as destiny. When Julie declares her love, the scene crystallizes the emotional asymmetry that has been building. This is not a sudden realization, but a long-held truth finally voiced, and the shock Marie expresses is not ignorance so much as the shock of being confronted with a reality she has been allowed to ignore because society rarely asks straight-presenting women to consider the emotional consequences of queer proximity. Marie's admission that she has never thought of Julie as a partner but once considered her a possibility for a one-night stand is delivered without cruelty, yet its impact is profound, illuminating a painful hierarchy in which queer women are often imagined as safe experiments rather than viable life choices. A space of transgression that does not threaten the architecture of heterosexual futures. The film does not punish Marie for this honesty, but it does allow the moment to sit uncomfortably, inviting viewers to examine how cultural narratives have taught women to compartmentalize desire, to relegate what feels true to what feels temporary, and to prioritize social legibility over emotional integrity. Julie's response, asking for a hug, might, in lesser hands, read as retreat, but here it is framed as agency, a choice to accept love in the form that is being offered without erasing her own dignity, and this gesture resonates deeply with queer audiences who have learned to negotiate closeness without guarantee, to value connection even when it does not lead where they wish. The embrace, stripped of spectacle, becomes a symbol of what is possible and what remains out of reach, a moment of tenderness that neither resolves nor exacerbates the tension but acknowledges it honestly. And this restraint is precisely what gives the film its power, because it mirrors real life more than fantasy ever could. In centering two women with shared history rather than new attraction, the film challenges the idea that queer stories must culminate in romantic fulfillment to be meaningful, instead proposing that visibility can also take the form of speaking truths that alter nothing externally but everything internally. The societal discomfort with women loving women hovers over the scene not as overt opposition, but as internalized hesitation. The fear of disrupting weddings, of being that person who complicates things, of choosing oneself at the expense of communal approval. And this discomfort persists because women's relationships, whether romantic or platonic, are still expected to orbit male partnership as their organizing principle, rendering any bond that competes with that orbit suspect or secondary. For Black women, this pressure is intensified by narratives of respectability and resilience that often leave little room for deviation, and the film's refusal to sensationalize Julie's queerness or Marie's confusion is a quiet act of resistance, insisting that Black queer women deserve stories that are neither cautionary tales nor eroticized exceptions, but nuanced reflections of lived experience. Emotionally, Julie embodies the role of the witness, the one who has carried memory and truth through years of silence, while Marie represents the woman standing at the threshold between what is expected and what is authentic, and their interaction becomes a study in how love can exist without possession, how longing can coexist with acceptance, and how becoming visible does not always mean being chosen. For women watching, queer or otherwise, the film offers a language for examining the costs of repression, the safety found in familiar roles, and the courage required to question whether the life one is building actually reflects the self one knows. And in doing so, it affirms that authenticity is not a single decision but an ongoing reckoning. Ultimately, this film does not ask viewers to root for a particular outcome. It asks them to sit with complexity, to honor the reality that love does not always arrive at the right time or in the right form, and to recognize that even unreciprocated or unrealized love can be transformative, making visible the truths we carry and the choices we avoid. In a media landscape that often demands clear winners and losers, this story's refusal to resolve into certainty is itself a statement, asserting that queer women's lives are not lessons or fantasies but ongoing negotiations with selfhood, history, and hope, and that there is profound dignity in telling those stories with patience, empathy, and respect.